Hello, in this lesson I will explain how to write the alto and tenor lines to your composition. This is lesson 5.4 and I'm going to jump to step 2 before going back to step 1. And just some guidelines here as you write your alto and tenor lines. You're going to write them at the same time. So rather than writing all the tenor and then coming back and writing the alto, write them at the same time before moving on to the next chord. And as you decide which note to give each of the parts, you want to try to move to the nearest chord tone when possible. You want to make sure all notes of the triad of your snowman are represented. And since triads have 3 notes and we're writing 4 parts, you will need to double one of the notes of the triad. And preference should be given to doubling the root, but if doubling the root causes you to have a big leap in one of the parts, then give priority to writing a smooth line and double the 5th instead. That would be the second preference as far as doubling, and you can even double the 3rd of the chord as a final preference, but give priority to writing a smooth line that's singable and doesn't jump around too much. So leaps of a 4th or greater are to be avoided as much as possible. And then finally, observe the following vocal ranges. So alto, you don't want to make it alto go lower than the 2nd ledger line below the treble staff, and don't go higher than 3rd space. Tenor, don't go lower than the 2nd space, and don't go higher than F. Some things to avoid: voice crossing. Make sure tenor does not go higher than alto, and alto does not go higher than soprano. Already mentioned, avoid lines that jump around a lot. Make sure you don't exceed the vocal ranges. Don't omit any of the 3 notes of the triad. And on the other hand, don't add notes that aren't part of the triad. And after you're finished, be sure to listen to it, because you can often catch notes that aren't part of the triad by listening to it slowly. Notes that aren't part of the triad will clash. Now, before we get started actually composing, I'll compose the first measure with you. I would, on a piece of paper, write down the letters that make up each of our 3 chords that we're using. So one chord is do, mi, so, but our composition's in the key of G. So what letters are these solfege on? And that's going to be important for moving forward in our composition. So do will be on G since we're in the key of G, and then re will be on A, so mi is on B, and so is on D. Fa is on the letter between, on C, and so fa is on C. D is so, la is E, and we already said do is G. So is on D, D, E, F, G, A. So I would have that written down somewhere and keep that handy as you compose your composition. All right, now going back to the top, back to step 1. First step, before you can add your alto and tenor lines, you have to add the staves first. So we're going to write this on 4 different staves: soprano on different staff than alto, and tenor on different staff than bass. And you do it the same way we've done it before. Press I to open the instrument panel. So go ahead and open your Hearts Unfold, and then press I on your keyboard. Go to your vocals, click the drop down arrow, and click alto, add, tenor, add. And while you're still in here, I would organize the order of the staves. So you want it to be soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and then let's move our chords all the way to the bottom. So the piano line is our soprano, and this is right now our triads, our chords, this staff right here. So I'm going to move that all the way to the bottom, and so you can click on it and then click the down arrow till it's at the bottom. We want the bass line to be right above that, and then it's the other two are correct. Click OK, and that's how it should appear. Now I prefer my tenor line to have a bass clef, so I'm going to change this tenor clef with a bass clef, and you can do that by coming over here to your palette. This palette is not here. You can go to View and check mark palettes at the very top. I'm going to click this drop down arrow, grab hold of this bass clef, and drag it over top of this. Also make sure you have key signature in of 1 sharp, and that you can do that the same way by going to key signatures, dragging that over here as well. And we're ready to compose. So let's look at the first chord here. First chord is a 1 chord, do, mi, so. Letters are G, B, D. So far I have written a G in the bass and a B in the soprano. So I need a D in either alto or tenor, and then the other of the two parts will double something, probably the root. Now D is pretty well in the kind of good note in the alto range. You'll see the alto range can go way down there. So D is a pretty far above the lowest note. And if we give tenor, if we double the root, which is G, that would be the top space. So that's right in the middle of the tenor range. So that's how I'm going to start it off. That's something you want to think about, is you want to try to start the parts in the middle of their range. And so I'm going to give bass or tenor the G, so click the whole rest, click quarter note, and I'm typing G. Alto, I'm going to give the D. Too high, that's an octave too up, so I'm going to hit Control down, because we don't want to start it higher than soprano. And our first chord is done. Same chord. So I'm going to stay on the same notes. You don't have to. You could maybe make something move around, keep it interesting. That would be acceptable. Whoops. I'm going to hit G here. Okay. Now we're ready for a new kind of chord. We're ready for a 4 chord, which is Fa, La, Do, or C, E, G. And I don't care which way you think. If you want to think in solfege or think in letters, you'll need to know the letters to enter them, or know where they are. But so far we have an E, which is La, and a C, which is Fa. So we need a G somewhere. And remember our rule, you want to move to the nearest chord tone when possible. Well, tenor's on a G, and so that's very close for tenor. I'm going to keep tenor on the G. And now we have 3 of our notes, or we have all 3 notes, C, E, and tenor has the G. Now we have to decide which note should alto double. Now we can't, actually yeah, we can. The root is C, and so that's close by. That's just below here, so I might as well go to the C. We could go up to the E as well. That would be doubling the third of the chord though instead of the root. If there's a choice, you want to, if it's the same distance, double the root. So I'm going to go to write alto as a C. And I'm just trying to explain to you my thinking process. A lot of choices to make, and a lot of choices are there's 2 or 3 good choices, none of them necessarily wrong. There's obviously some wrong choices, but there's a lot of right choices too. But I'm trying to explain why I'm making the choices I am. You want to try to make a smooth line is one of your biggest priorities. Okay, the next chord is D, F, A. So T, Re. So far we have a D and a D. So our root is already doubled, and alto and tenor will have to cover the other 2 notes, which is F and A. Now tenor is right between those 2 notes. We could go down to F, a second down, or a second up to the A. Now let's see which one though is closer for the alto. F would be jumping up to the 4th to the bottom space, and A would be going down to the bottom of its range. I don't want to go that low. I could. It is within the alto range. That's the lowest note the altos can sing, but that is pretty low for alto, and then I won't have a choice going forward which direction to go. I'll have to go up. So I'm going to jump alto up to the F and tenor up to the A. And then we got our D, D, F, A. Now I could avoid this. This is a leap of a fourth, which isn't too big, and as long as I don't have too many of those, I'll be okay. But I could change this note to the E here, which would mean I'm doubling the E of this chord instead of the root, the third of the chord instead of the root. And I actually kind of like that. It makes a nice smooth line going up and avoids that leap of a fourth. And so I'm going to prioritize making a smooth line over doubling the root in this case. I'll let you complete the final 3 measures by yourself. Make sure you listen to it when you're finished. If you didn't watch the video on how to adjust play settings, I would encourage you to do that. I'll go over it again briefly right now. But you want to change all the sounds to piano. I would, because the choir ahs that are the default sound for alto and tenor will not sound good. So you do that by going to Mixer, and then each of these vertical bars stands for a part. Click your alto bar, and I already changed it, but you scroll all the way up and click grand piano. Same way with, then click tenor, scroll all the way up to grand piano, and then you'll want to mute out your chords. Okay, because they'll just add sound that you don't need. You want to listen to only the 4 parts that you've written. So click this M for mute, and that'll just, then you'll just be able to hear the top 4 parts when you play. And then your play panel is here. I'm going to exit out of this mixer, and I would adjust the tempo down and listen to it slowly. Rewind to the beginning. You can hit play here or here. And make sure there are no notes that clash.